X does for us is the feds send the dollars to the state. The state commingles the federal dollars with New York State family planning dollars because New York State absolutely recognizes the value of family planning. And they have been working with us in our statewide office. They've been in a bit of a panic over what this defunding of Planned Parenthood could mean. First of all, taking away birth control from the lowest income women. Second of all, Medicaid services for 60% of our patients. They know what's going to happen. They know they're going to be walking through the emergency room. New York State is on a process right now to try and reduce its Medicaid costs. Using the emergency room for STIs, for pregnancy testing, is not the way to go, or to get your birth control. So New York State has been very aware of the critical nature of this. So what the dollars do for us is they help us provide a sliding fee scale for women who might not qualify for some of the ACA insurances. ACA is a mixed blessing because the young people who come to us that have it don't know anything about insurances and signed up for $5,000 deductibles so that they would be able to not have to pay a penalty. So when they get a bill from a healthcare provider, they go, but I have insurance, but they don't understand, what that reality is. So it allows us to set up sliding fee so that we can reduce the costs and get women on to get their screenings and provide affordable birth control. So Title X, as I said, absolutely cannot pay for abortion services. So the spiel that we're hearing, no taxpayer dollars for abortion, is a soundbite that has revved up the base of this particular administration. The other thing that could happen is that if we are taken out of the Title X program, we will lose our drug discount. Because right now there is a significant drug discount attached to being a Title X provider. And so here's the latest news. The legislature has just started the motions to not take Title X away from just Planned Parenthood, but to eliminate the program nationwide. That means that community health centers that get Title X, hospitals that get Title X. It is a way to get Planned Parenthood because they've tried in the past to pull it out, and it's discrimination. You can't take it away from one provider just because of another service they do. So there's a proposal now to completely eliminate the main family planning program in the United States from all providers. That was July 12th. The House Appropriations Committee released its draft bill. So as I said, this isn't a war on abortion. It is a war on contraceptives. It is a war on the one medication that most women in this country rely on. I think the other thing, if they're serious about abortion, the way to prevent a woman from having to make that choice is to have contraceptives available at Walmart over the counter. And it's just such hypocrisy. It's such blatant hypocrisy, but they're not serious about the abortion issue. They are very serious about controlling women's bodies. Okay, so what does this all mean for Planned Parenthood? Well, if all the bad stars align, and I'm going to talk specifically about Planned Parenthood Mid-Hudson Valley. Nationally, 8,800 people a day access Planned Parenthood services. And so if this all comes to pass, and now it looks like no matter what happens to this health care bill, Title X is probably going away. I think they have the votes for that nationwide. So if we lose our Medicaid funding, which is 60% of our reimbursement, and if we lose Title X and we have the increased cost for contraceptives because we're no longer eligible for the discount, Our budget is about $8.5 million. We'll lose about $4 million of that. It means that of the 20,000 visits that we see each year, 12,000 of those people will not be able to use their Medicaid insurance with us. It means that the absolute lowest income, most vulnerable women in the Mid-Hudson Valley would not have access to our reproductive health care. And I need to note that 6 out of 10 of them tell us we are the only health care provider they may access in any given year. Many women do see their OBGYN as their primary, and we are actually doing increased primary care to make sure that the women who only come to us are having their diabetes screenings and all the other things we do. There has been a hue and cry from the administration that if Planned Parenthood went away, all of these federally qualified health centers would be able to pick up the slack. And so they listed all of the community health centers in many rural states and everything. Federally qualified health centers are federally funded, and they are not all primary care sites. So the ones that they listed in several of the states were pediatrics, podiatry, it was just dentistry, vision care, and the big joke was, they do away with Planned Parenthood, and I'm going to have to go to my dentist to get my pap smear, because that's the only federally qualified health center, in my state. So that has been the thrust from the legislators. There was a wonderful, wonderful program on NPR where they had the heads of several of the largest federally qualified health centers from around the country saying, no way in hell. There's no way we can pick up the immediacy. And when people come to us, they're not calling 3 weeks in advance. They're walking in the door, and we take walk-ins every day. So the other irony, I think, is really hysterical, and that is the President's budget proposal that he has floated. Defunds, takes away the money from Planned Parenthood. But they're saying that the community health centers would be able to pick up and they would switch the money over to them. They're flat funded. The budget for the FQHCs, federally qualified health centers, is flat funded. So they are not even trying to make the effort to show that they're trying to increase capacity within the healthcare system.
Excuse me, what's flat funded?
It means that they have not increased. It's the same as it's been for the last 5 years. They just haven't done any. What's that going to mean to us if all this comes to pass? It's going to mean we're going to have to shrink. I want you to know that the board of directors of Planned Parenthood Mid-Hudson Valley has been phenomenal. We have some reserves, and they have said what we want to do is we want to take a chunk of that reserve and put it aside so that if indeed this bill passes and Planned Parenthood is defunded from the Medicaid program for a year is what they've got in now, sorry. There's going to be, we're going to get into court nationally as soon as we possibly can. We don't know how long it will take to get an injunction, but we're pretty sure we can get an injunction. We hope. The Ninth Circuit has been pretty good on a lot of progressive causes, the Ninth Circuit Court. So we have made the decision that we are not going to turn away Medicaid patients. We are going to tell them for the time period it takes to get this injunction, you're welcome to come to us. Donors have given us this money and we rely on it to run our health centers because reimbursement in any healthcare environment doesn't pay the bills. But we are going to make sure that the word is not out on the street, you can't go to Planned Parenthood. We need to be sure that the women can continue to come while the Federation, the National Federation, takes this through a legal process and tries to get a stay. We're joining with our other affiliate sisters in New York State. We're looking into telemedicine so that places like Monticello, if I can't afford to keep a clinician there full-time, perhaps I can keep the office open full-time and then have access to having telemedicine visits with some of our other clinicians. The scramble we're going through right now to try and maintain services for this vulnerable population is mind-boggling, and a lot of us aren't sleeping real well. So, there was a new wrinkle over the weekend, and so keep your eyes and ears open for this one. This bill is going through under what's called the budget reconciliation process. And the healthcare, that's how the healthcare bill is going through. It's going through ostensibly as a budgetary issue. So I'm going to just read this because I just pulled it off of some information we got from Planned Parenthood. Budget reconciliation vehicles, which is the vehicle moving this bill, are bound by the BYRD, B-Y-R-D, rule, which sets certain limitations on the types of provisions that can be included in a reconciliation bill. One of the main limitations in budget reconciliation is that provisions must be primarily budgetary in nature, not focused on pursuing politically motivated policy agendas. As such, historically, provisions related to abortion have been struck under the BYRD rule as they are clearly motivated by politics. However, in 2015, the defunding Planned Parenthood provision was included on a reconciliation bill, which of course we had the president with the veto power at that particular time. So we are praising right now because the Senate parliamentarian just came, talked about this weekend. We don't know what's going to happen. But it clearly is a way that if they do a repeal, or they somehow get a repeal and replace that, that there would be some legal standing. My other understanding, and I haven't delved into this, is that they would have to do it on a 60 vote. And we just don't think they can do that. So keep your ear tuned this week as to whether this BYRD provision continues to
Make
come up.
phone calls.
So, all right, New York State. Here's what is very problematic about many of this administration's policies, and the fact that there are going to be other threats. We expect to see federal abortion bans. Probably the biggest threat to all of us, I speak for myself, to women and women's rights, will be subsequent appointments to the Supreme Court. Administrative changes in the ACA that will no longer guarantee access to contraception with no copay. So let's just for a minute talk about New York State. If indeed Roe goes down, we do have an abortion law in New York State. It was signed into law in 1970, 3 years prior to Roe. New York's law was written to protect doctors who were doing abortions in case of the life of the mother was at stake. And so, our New York State abortion law states that abortions are legal until viability, 6 months, 24 weeks, in the case of the life of the mother. And it is written in the penal code. Roe comes along 3 years later and says viability, life and health of the mother. Now a doctor and a woman can certainly determine lots of different aspects of what the health of a mother might be. And so essentially, abortion is a decision made between a woman and her doctor. And it doesn't have to solely be because she's going to die. Well, Roe got passed. Nobody back in New York thought, we should probably bring our law up to speed with Roe. It just sat there because now we have Roe. If Roe goes down, we are left with a law in New York State that does not provide for the life and the health of the mother. And it puts doctors at much greater risk in terms of documenting the abortion services. So for the last 2 or 3 years, we, I'm talking Planned Parenthood, through our statewide advocacy office, brought forth through sponsorship actually. One of the sponsors the last time was a Republican senator who is friendly to us. And we were trying to get the Reproductive Health Act passed. It has sailed through the Assembly. We cannot get it through the Senate. And that act essentially says we want to take the abortion law out of the penal code, put it in the public health code where it belongs, and bring the language in line with Roe. Very strong Catholic conference. We have not been able to get the Senate to pass this law. So I will just tell you, there's another component to Planned Parenthood in New York State, and I'm not wearing that hat today, so I'm not going to get too political. But we do have a statewide, it's called Planned Parenthood Empire State Acts, and it's our collective advocacy organization, and our PAC falls under that. And we believe that one of our primary statewide Planned Parenthood goals has got to do some significant fundraising for that PAC. What has happened in the past is, and I'll use this district as an example. We have a C4. In the past, we were able to raise money or do independent expenditures for candidates. And every Planned Parenthood around the state would have its favorite son. So we'd be out there pounding doors for Terry Gibson.
Can I just interject? So the 501c3 versus the 501c4, just so everybody understands.
Yes, the 501c3, I can, as a nonprofit healthcare organization under 501c3, I can go to my legislator and say, I want you to know what the impact of this would be on the healthcare women. You know, you don't have to go under a special guise, but when we were doing independent expenditure work before the state changed some laws, we would all focus. Out in Rochester, they'd be focusing on their favorite son. Here, we'd be focusing on our favorite son. We need to raise money in New York State, pool it at the state level, and let the expert political strategists do their work around New York State and say, Terry, we love you, but it's not viable. Or Bob Smith out in wherever, you know, there's no way in hell you're going to beat her. So we need to be taking a look at Senate seats, especially around New York State, that we can support, who are supportive of women's health and women's rights. And so I think that's why I wanted to leave you primarily with the fact that what's happening at the federal level with a lot of this legislation, we are not protected here. We also are trying to get through the Comprehensive Contraceptive Care Act, which would maintain the contraceptive coverage for women in New York that the ACA currently does, and we have been unable to get that through as well. So, when I talked about The Handmaid's Tale, I think we're in a position where things are going on in this country that scare the hell out of me. They haven't gotten through, they haven't passed, but I want to just tell you 2 things that have happened in states where I'm friends with the CEO colleagues. First of all, Texas. The minute the state took away their ability to access their statewide family planning grant, they saw a 35% decline in women using effective contraceptives, and they saw a 27% increase in a very short amount of time. Women who had previously used injectable contraceptives or LARCs, they saw a 27% increase in unintended pregnancies. And I want to emphasize that they took away their money and they closed clinics based on the fact that 3% of what they did was abortion services and 97% was women's health and contraceptives. 100,000 women have attempted self-induced abortions in Texas.
Since when?
Since the end of a year and a half. Almost 5% of Texas women report they or a friend have attempted, due to lack of access to a health center. Women are traveling 3 and 4 hours in Texas to try and get to any abortion services. And I want to scream out and say that women did not start having abortions when we passed Roe v. Wade. They just stopped dying from them. And that's what we're facing today. And the last thing I'm going to share with you is what happens when you mix partisan politics with health care. You probably all, when you go to the doctor, they give you the HIPAA forms to fill out and who could be your proxy, and you're guaranteed your right to privacy under a 1996 federal law. 19 months ago, senators in Missouri moved to hold the CEO of Planned Parenthood of St. Louis in contempt of court under the threat of jail time because she would not release the names of women who had gone to that health center, who had signed consent forms for abortion services. The subpoena called for her to turn over all of those records so that the legislators would have the names of the women who had been, maybe didn't even get an abortion, but had been contemplating an abortion and had signed the consent form to have the counseling.
Which state was it?
Missouri. Planned Parenthood did get an injunction, but I just started to project what this slippery slope, where it could lead. Many types of birth control don't prevent conception. They prevent implantation. And so what if legislators who were gung-ho to say, oh, birth control causes abortions, wanted to know the records of women who used certain types of birth control? This is the slipperiest of slippery slopes when you start to get into this whole issue of releasing records. What about voluntary sterilization? There are a lot of congressmen that do not believe in sterilization. Our medical records are not secure. I believe that if we allow these kinds of things to happen in this country, we are getting to the point where it is Big Brother, and that we really aren't going to have the chance to maintain our privacy or our choices for our health care. I aim to scare the shit out of everybody. That's okay. So at these events, I usually just say, you know, I'm yours. You can ask questions. I don't always have the answers. But I hope you have a better picture of the gravity of what women are facing and what the legislation on the federal level could really do here in New York State, and the significant economic disaster it would be for the poorest people in the Mid-Hudson Valley. We are at a 40-year low for unintended pregnancies in this country and a 30-year low for teen pregnancies. 6 months, 9 months, that could be gone.
I was actually wondering if you've seen that in Texas. I've taught high school, and so I know the importance. I don't care about young kids getting abortions. I know I've had many students who needed counseling and needed someone to talk to about how does my cycle work, or what should I do? Have you seen, since they've closed all of those centers in Texas, a rise in teenage pregnancies?
Yes, there's been that in that 27% unintended. That's included with the with teen as well.
There's a terrific documentary that a friend did. Her name, she's a documentary filmmaker named Dawn Porter, and it's called Trapped. It came out last year, I think.
They showed it over at the
I'm new to the area, so
Yeah.
but anyway, it really shows what happened in Texas. Women were traveling to New Mexico. Women were getting to the clinics that were open and being told, sorry, we can't take you today. And to come back again was like $1,000 for them. It was just, it's really heartbreaking to see what, that snap, as Ruth just said, that one big change can affect such lives.
What can we do in Kingston and in New York State to help support you in keeping Title X in place?
Well, my list of things is somewhat limited. I think what you're doing here is incredibly important. I know that we're only one issue that you're hearing about. I believe there is information when you leave. There are many, many groups over in Dutchess. There's Hudson Valley Strong. Around the region, there are a lot of the indivisible groups that have sprung up to really examine the policies of this administration and how they are impacting the economy. You know, women's rights is clearly a big one. So I would just encourage you to stay as involved as possible in resistance kinds of groups. For our purposes, I will tell you, some of the senators who are on the line right now about this have been significantly impacted by Planned Parenthood rallies and by visits from Planned Parenthood, personal visits with Cecile. I mean, it works. The New York Times, I don't know whether anybody read it last week, there's an editorial, was it Paul Krugman, I can't remember, said that he really doubted that the energy could be kept up, but that this resistance isn't going anywhere, and it is resistance that will, so doing that, consider small donations if you can't consider big donations to Planned Parenthood. We are using every penny locally to try and ensure that we can keep our doors open. And you know, it's because of our fundraising that we're going to be able to bridge that month during trying to get a stay, and continue to serve Planned Parenthood.
One more question. I'm sorry, Julie, just on that note, is there a way for the public to be able to see how their senators are weighing in on this, say in this area, so that we can place pressure if necessary?
Specifically John Faso, who was one of the
Yeah.
architects of the original.
So it's
So are
Congress
you
still.
talking, statewide, or are you talking?
Locally.
Okay.
Is there a way to identify?
Yes, there's for the, like the Affordable, the Reproductive Health Act and the,
Title X?
that's federal. It's
Okay,
not local.
gotcha.
Right. So the only two things that are statewide are Comprehensive Contraceptive Care Act and Reproductive Health Act, trying to bring it into line with Roe v. Wade. On the federal level, there are numerous websites where you can go to see how they voted. And yes.
Well, I have a question. Have you been in contact with John Faso's office? Has Planned Parenthood been specifically, publicly?
Yes. We have Faso Fridays.
Okay, you're part of it.
Drive past and you will see anywhere from 50 to 150 pink shirts in front of the
Yes.
nurse's office.
Okay.
To that
And
point,
by the way, there's some outside.
Where does
Grab
outdoor
yours.
stand?
I don't think he's come.
Who?
Georgiana has never come. Yeah. I'm right now focusing Georgiana.
I'm sorry, to that point, I just moved here from a district that was New Jersey 11's change, and we got a lot of press. We were about almost 7,000 people, and we had Fridays with Freedom Night. So Freedom Night is the, so NPR, Rachel Miller, it works. It
Yes.
really works, but sitting here, and please no one take offense to this, but sitting here in like-minded adults, what works about New Jersey 11, and I don't know yet about Fridays about Orlando, is the diversity. Not only the diversity of economic level, but diversity of political point of views. So there are people involved there that are more conservative than even Republicans. So, so it's interesting, the voice. So when they don't only want to go to progressive. So that's a nice organization to look at, because they really organize and they don't give up. And if anyone heard, he basically got a lawyer fired. And he wrote a letter on a private campaign donation saying that she was one of the rebel rousers. And that is now going under an ethics committee. So just keep pushing them under the fire. You have to.
It just occurs to me that as much as, hinging on that, as much as we need to educate our community at risk, the at-risk community, about what's available, what Planned Parenthood offers, they need to get educated about what is at stake that they could lose, because that's a whole different kind of conversation.
Right. And so I will tell you that we have an incredibly robust public affairs department. We have thousands and thousands of names in different email blast formats. We did a blast, it was in January, and we only had 3 days notice, and we got 600 people in front of the Planned Parenthood and in the square. We got the police to help direct traffic and everything. So we are also doing education in our health centers with our patients. We're talking to them about what it means to get out and vote. We do voter registration within the health centers. So we're trying to tackle this from both the Planned Parenthood may not be here. You need to listen to, and we can't tell them who to vote for, but clearly we need to educate them about the consequences of voting for someone who is not supportive of Planned Parenthood services.
And on the subject of diversity, this program now that's coming to a third community of Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, and now Kingston. Can you gave an overview, and it says here that it sounds like prior to initiating this program, that you've reached 399 people through your community outreach activities in Kingston.
Yes, right.
And provided programming for 16 people. So one of the things that you said that I really appreciate earlier was that it wasn't going to be you knocking on doors. And that's because, for obvious reasons, in neighborhoods where you might, you're a white woman going in and saying, this is what you need, it can be a difficult conversation to have, realistically. So can you explain to us a little bit about how this program would work in Kingston and how you go about making those inroads into, because you've engaged all these wonderful...
So what will happen is that we will hire people from the communities of color. They will go in and they'll set up tables. They will be doing HIV testing at soup kitchens. It'll be the same model. We'll be doing street work for handing out information about where you can get contraceptives. We get a lot of the young kids to go out and hand out condoms on the street. So it will be engaging not only just individuals, but also having our representatives of color being in doing programming with coalition partners at other community-based organizations.
Right, so the first step in working with the public to alert them of the things that they're going to lose, the first step is getting them to the clinic, to start to build relationships of trust, and to understand what they can do too, which is a process.
Mhm.
It's not,
Doesn't happen overnight.
it doesn't happen overnight.
And that's another interesting thing, because we're not selling a widget. We're not going out and saying, this, you know, you're gonna have instant weight loss if you come to us and get this, or, you know, your hair's gonna grow back if you come to our health center and do such and such. You're educating them about things that they will need in the future. And so it may be months and months before somebody you meet understands that they might have an STI and there's a place where they should go. So we are trying, however, to make women understand the importance of the birth control issue and getting this as soon as possible. We have doctors from Institute for Family Health, other community health centers, that will call us because they don't stock the variety of contraceptives. It may take them 3 weeks to get a woman in to get an IUD because they're ordering the IUD. They just send them down to us because they know we can get them in like that. We are making terrific partnerships right now with behavioral health providers, because many women who are severely depressed or having mental health issues really should not be contemplating or have an unintended pregnancy. So we're trying to make all of these different cross connections in terms of where we can partner with other physicians and community-based organizations and schools.
So I have a question that's sort of the flip side. Viagra seems, erectile dysfunction medications seem to be available through Medicare and Medicaid financing. How is that, how would Title IX, or 10, I'm sorry, it won't impact that? Because I'm just trying to say, how do you make allies in
Title
weird
10
families?
Title 10 is strictly for family planning. And
But if I was male and I couldn't get it up, wouldn't I say I need?
it wouldn't come under Title 10.
Oh,
It's
okay.
birth control.
Yeah.
One of the thoughts I've had is that I'm wondering if there's thinking that if Planned Parenthood goes, the clinic go, I'll just go to my doctor, or I'll just go to Institute for Family Health or something. And I'm wondering if there isn't a way we can help them understand that that's not an alternative, that they're not going to get similar services, anything like as well and as quickly as if they went to Planned Parenthood.
Well, you know, I think our patients know that because they come to us. When some got their ACA cards, their new insurance cards, this was an eye-opener for us. Some said, oh, okay, now I can go to a real doctor. Okay. They were back within 6 months. Because the customer service, the personal woman attention was not what they had gotten used to. And so the education that you're talking about is not necessarily for the patients. I think this is what we have been really emphasizing to our congressmen and our senators, is that the system cannot afford to lose the capacity for the 9,000 people that walk through the door every day, and that have been very much documented by the heads of these federally qualified health centers that they cannot increase that capacity. We are looking at county level disasters in terms of financial impact of an influx of unintended pregnancies.
I'm curious about how, I've been angry for a long time, maybe erroneously, and maybe somebody else about how much money is made off of adoptions and who gets that money, and how that private enterprise plays into all of this trying to regulate whether women keep babies or don't have babies or whatever. I just can't help but wonder about that connection.
It's not anything that, I mean, when a woman comes to us, it's very clear that we give her our 3 options: prenatal care, adoption, and abortion, and we will give her referrals to. And you know what? That's another thing I want to say. Sometimes I will go downstairs on the day that we do in-clinic abortions, And the schedule will say, you know, we had 20, 25 scheduled. We only do them once a week. And at the end of the day, maybe only 19 had abortions. And I would say to our doctor, and he said, no, he said, 4 of them, after we talked to them, changed their mind, because what we really want to do is make sure they're not being coerced by somebody else. And when we talk them through the coercion thing, many of them will change their mind. And I think, good, we did our job, because that's what we're really, it's choice.
I'm wondering if you've noticed any statistics now that so many of our undocumented folks are afraid to do anything, you know, that has to do with an institution. What are they going to do?
We serve them.
But
So you don't ask for any paperwork when people walk in?
Nope.
I'm just wondering if they're afraid.
It is so clear, and I don't know it through the healthcare piece, but I do know it through some people that used to use undocumented folks for home construction, do all sorts of, there's just nobody available. They're all hiding.
Yeah, so they're probably going to be hiding from the clinics as well.
So what happens when someone's undocumented and comes in for services? You know, there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about undocumented citizens not paying taxes or right? So let's clarify that, because they
And
have
most of them are
services.
self-pay. They come in and they find through their friends.
Because that's a talking point for the other side, that their Planned Parenthood is giving free
No, they
services.
pay for their services.
Right, so out of pocket?
And it's the same thing for abortion services. Most, in New York State, New York State Medicaid, not federal Medicaid, pay for abortions. And most commercial insurances pay for abortions. One of the things that the ACA, the bill that's is being proposed stated that any insurer who wanted to participate in the marketplace would not be able to offer abortions as it's within its complement of services. And interestingly, New York has a law that if you want to be an insurance provider in New York State, you must offer abortion services or have a mechanism for a rider. So Fidelis, for example, you know, you can buy a different kind of rider to your insurance. So that puts New York at total odds with, you know, what the feds are trying to do.
Just a statistic question, just for Mid-Hudson Valley. What is the percentage of your services that go to abortion, and what is your percentage that go to family planning?
Here, it's 85%. As I said, we did about 20,000 patient visits last year, about 3,000 of them. So it varies. It can go from 10% to 15%
Is abortion.
is abortion.
And the rest is?
The rest is preventive GYN care, right? Testing and treatment.
One of the things you've talked about, and I wanted to pull this up in my notes, was when you're discussing the budget. These are my quick notes, so hopefully the reference will, you recall. But you spoke about the U.S. State Senator Chuck Schumer's comments that we will work with anyone or everyone on the budget. And I wasn't sure if that was a comment that was either problematic, that you were referring to as problematic, or if it's a positive.
I think it's positive. I think that we just need to get those who value the services that we provide into the conversation. There'll never be a compromise unless those conversations happen.
I just have a question in regards to the Kingston area. What's the relationship between Planned Parenthood and Kingston High School?
We have a good relationship. We have been able to work with them to get our educators in there. in classes, as well as they have been very receptive of having this youth health promoter program. They know that there's kids in the school that work with us and that can talk to the other teens about prevention services or intervention services if they need to get care at the health center. No, it's been positive.
Great, good to hear.
Can I ask you a question about that? Are those kids public? Like, do people know? Because I'm working with the Midtown Rising Initiative for the Happy Spot, which is going to be a whole community and that. We want to give good citizen awards, and one of the things we were discussing the other day with some of the community organizers there that live in the area was having a kid pick a mentor or somebody in their community that was, and if these representatives, youth wouldn't mind being publicly, they would be a great idea.
Talk later, I'll put you in touch with the right
Right,
person.
I just want to make sure it's public and
Oh, yeah, no, and some of these kids, through this program, the self-esteem, the power that they feel in helping other people, many of them who were not motivated to go to college have gone on to college. Some have come back to Planned Parenthood with their bachelors and become educators for Planned Parenthood. It's really amazing to see.
and I think also, I was at a dinner last night for something different, but where the teens from Midtown are, their first job was at the YMCA farm camp. So they got up to spoke, and how proud they felt about helping their neighborhood. So any time you empower kids,
Right.
they're our next generation. We need to.
I'd like to connect with you too.
So did you learn anything?
I think we did more.
Okay. Did you?
I have a couple. The fast one, where is the Ninth Circuit Court? Is that federal or state?
Federal, and that's out on the West Coast. I think it might also be the one that covers Hawaii, Washington, Oregon.
Yeah, that's the one. That,
Oh, that's the one that,
It's the one that the current administration would like to do away with.
yeah, he's going to
Right.
vote on the immigration.
And could you speak a little bit more about what the Democrats in the Senate and House are doing in relation to the Title X?
Well, you know what? Yeah, that
Is it in the booklets and
here. Because it just happened a couple of days ago. So it's the House Appropriations Committee. Released its draft appropriations bill for the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and related agencies for fiscal year 2018. And the bill included a $5 billion cut over the 2017 appropriation, and it eliminated or drastically reduced critical public health programs, including the Title X. So this is only the House appropriations. That's as far as it's gone. But it's the first step to eliminating the Title X program.
And how do we find out who sits on that committee? I know FASO is involved in that. But I'd
I
like
think
to
you could
know.
probably Google
Yeah,
it.
you can find out, first of all, we just go to your local, if you want to find out about your local representatives, go to their page, and it should be on there. There should be transparency, or go to the senate.org website, and it should be on there. The other thing is call. They have interns answering the phone, you say, what committee do they sit on, and what is their position?
It also eliminates the National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program, which has funded many of the programs in the schools, getting kids access to contraceptives, and that's why we're at a 30-year low, so that's going away. I mean, you're going to see a disaster.
So does Planned Parenthood also have a place on their site where if everybody funneled into, for example, who may not know how to access their...
Not we would, but it would be Planned Parenthood Federation of America. So if you went to ppfa.org,
you
They-
could plug into these.
They would probably have a site, and I haven't looked at it recently, for their 501c4, which is their action fund. You'd be looking for the Planned Parenthood Federation of America Action Fund, which would have more of the national politics.
Okay. Go ahead, Karen.
So in my mind, resistance to birth control has always sort of stemmed from religious beliefs. And you know, those would be representative people in control in government. But I've certainly seen numerous occasions that there's a declining population of people who identify with a church or a religious system or something like that. So where, if there's a renewed effort, or I don't know if it's renewed, but if there is this strong effort to control access to birth control, do you have an idea as to where it's coming from?
Yeah, it's coming from the evangelical, the evangelical wing, and it's a significant number of those who are in power right now that are really pushing that. Now, many of them will say that birth control causes abortions, so they're trying to link it back to the abortion issue. I mean, I have to laugh. I mean, I think about this now. I grew up in Westchester. My father was a Rockefeller Republican. He was scared to death when Jack Kennedy got elected because he thought birth control would be an issue because he was Catholic. I mean, it didn't turn out to be an issue then, but, you know, so it just is kind of ironic that I was flipping back to that in my head the other day, that my dad was scared to death that birth control was going to be a problem under a Catholic president.
And the thing is that the evangelical church is the strongest of churches, I would say, in this country, wouldn't you?
Well, clearly among those who are in elected positions right now, because of this, that base.
I would like to relate something that I discovered recently too, and nobody I know of is talking about this sort of stuff, but I was talking to an elderly gentleman who was fairly thoughtful on some level about birth control and abortion and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things that he brought up was that part of a problem that we now have in this country with the ability to support our elderly is that our birth control has caused not enough people, young people, in the workforce to support the old people that are, because now we have this big bunch of old
It's the
people.
social security issue.
So, yeah, and but he was dead serious.
Now, the millennials, so the boomers, right, okay, they were the big bump. Millennials are the next, or even bigger bump than the boomers.
They're a bigger generation. There's
Yeah.
more born than they were in 19.
What about a generation that's created from
Yeah.
It's the same way, it's the same way when we're talking about
Crazy, though. I mean, yes, if you look at overall, when you do have a decrease in birth control, and this sort of thing happened in Germany, which is part of the reason why they opened their doors to people from Syria, because they did not have enough workers, young
No, it was
workers.
workers because they actually gave money to women to go off and have children. So they actually said, we don't have enough Germans being born, so if you're a German woman and you have a child, we'll give you a year or two off. And so they actually lost a lot of the women workers, and then they needed
But why
to.
they even needed to think about doing that? I mean, I just think that we're crazy if we don't look at all of the things.
Yeah, we have to
that are
look
involved.
at the
Yes,
whole
the
picture.
evangelicals are the biggest problem, but there are a lot of people out there that are not evangelicals that are concerned about the fact that there are not enough white Christian Americans being born to control the country the way that we have.
So
That's the
what do you
problem.
think?
I mean, that really is, it's a
I'm
scary,
not
I'm sorry to
a
say, it's a
population
scary,
expert.
we think about hand sanitizer, but it's a scary thought. And we all have this we all have these dysfunctional, neurotic conspiracy theory going in. But I hate to think that there's a group of white evangelist men sitting somewhere in Washington in a secret bunker saying, we gotta control too many blacks and Latinos are having babies and not enough whites. I would hate to think that. I mean,
Evangelical eugenics.
Because that's what's happening.
But isn't it 2040 that white
whites will be the minority?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the whole.
But
Yeah.
America, in essence, is built upon that premise, unfortunately.
Right. Is it?
Well, about segregation and all, and, you know, I mean, it's, well, I don't want to generalize, but I think that what you're afraid of is a part of our history. So in fact, and that's why these kinds of conversations, bringing it back, are, you know, when you say you're sorry to frighten us, I mean, this is a sad state where what's true is something that frightens us, well, which is also common.
Yeah,
So
so we have to look at it as that submerged state, all those policies that allow for women to be subjugated, blacks and Latinas to be.
Right, and I think what you're, my interpretation of your question is that there's many implications, right? So, you know, we could really dissect this conversation into so many segments, which I encourage people to do. This is one moment.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, my fault.
No, it's, I appreciate your passion. What we should be doing is continuing the conversations, and when we talk about diversity and bringing more people together, we need more and more of our community to be hosting, you know, these kinds of conversations and bringing out the different topics that maybe, I mean, that it takes a village, right? So we need to continue to make those connections, and you were going to say?
Well, I was just saying, I also think it's very important to listen to statistics, the numbers. And I think Planned Parenthood has done a great job this last year in social media and their own campaign, but I don't know that people get the facts like you just said. I think they think progressive women who want to have sex, so they go there. You know, so that's the whole agenda against progressive white women, or it's abortions. They don't, you know, even though we keep knocking in the advocates that are saying it's women's health is what it is. That those numbers, they're out there, but do we do enough job as your volunteers and stuff to really talk to people about? Do you know that in Hudson Valley, 85% of the women that use Planned Parenthood is for health?
Well, and that's part of my other charge to you, is cocktail party, bridge club, whatever. You know, if there's any way to say, gosh, I went to a conversation the other night, and Planned Parenthood is primarily doing such an incredible job of prevention, and on top of that, they are so concerned about the disproportionate bad outcomes for women of color. They've even raised money to try and get into communities of color so that women can have access to screenings they wouldn't otherwise. I just think when I do these conversations, and I've done probably 30 of these kinds of groups since the beginning of the year, it's sort of my charge to say you now have a little bit of education about what we do locally and what some of the statistics are, and you know, we can use you as an ambassador in a situation where you hear something that you can, or you're going to get a folder out there that has my card in it. Make sure you have people call me.
Do you have any information about the increase in self-induced abortions going on in the
No, I haven't. That was just that was the initial response that we heard from Texas. That is, yeah.
We haven't got anything.
No, because we've had full access to abortion services here in New York.
So another point that you had raised is that people can walk right into your clinics and get whatever services that they need. How many of you have called your doctor or your OBGYN to get a regular annual appointment and be told that they are scheduling 6 months out?
That's right.
We do.
I know,
They call us. We encourage people not to just walk in, but if they walk in,
I know, but
because you know they can wait 2 hours, but we will get them in within a day or two.
But anyway, so if we make that, if we also put that information out there, it's really important, because if one thinks that one is pregnant, one doesn't want to wait 6 months.
Or UTI.
Or yes, thank you.
Urinary tract infection.
Just in terms of conspiracy theories, there's money behind this evangelical movement. And do you have statistics, information, or?
No.
Because we have learned in our various progressive media outlets how incredibly powerful and how much money is being thrown at grassroots movements to fight us, basically, and disempower us.
I don't
Is
think
there?
that's a conspiracy theory, actually. I think
You
that's
do?
very true.
Yeah.
But
Well-
what I've noticed is that it's difficult sometimes to identify what's what. Some of the names of these PAC groups
Exactly.
they sound pretty benign. And also, but I'm sure that there are ways that, and I'm sure that there are ways that they also don't, or find ways to not report, but that if you are interested in following, there's a reporting that's necessary. Again, I don't know what sort of, what's the term when you wiggle out of something? You know that? I'm sorry?
Renee?
Okay, so I'm just finishing a question. Sure.
Suggesting it?
We'll wrap it up.
No, we'll wrap it up or just take a
Well,
break and then.
I think we're pretty close to being done, so thank you. But anyway, what is your experience? So Planned Parenthood has a PAC, as you said.
We have a statewide PAC, and that's strictly to support the things that you're talking about would be the strategists, the political strategists at the federal level that, I don't have regular interaction with.
Okay. So a couple more questions and we'll wrap it up. Jenny?
I just wanted to say thank you, and my mom, Barbara Sarah, said she wanted to be here, but she had a conflict. And I'm actually...
Barbara was on our board for several years.
And she came away from a meeting in Westchester, this group called Better Angels. Do you know about them? Where they bring 4 red representatives and 4 blue representatives of an area together for a dialogue, kind of fishbowl dialogue. And she was chosen as one of the blue representatives. And she
That she was.
I'm sorry?
Seriously.
Although she forgot she would bring her little elephant necklace at the Death Cafe, the elephant in the room. But anyway, she said she came away very discouraged because even with these very well-educated red representatives, that the thing that struck her the most was that they didn't care who was in office. They just want to see things cut because government is a problem. And so all the conspiracy theories and all the money behind things is really behind this very deep-seated ideology, just cut and gut. Because that is, to some people, the problem. They didn't succeed because of government, or all the social services, or the fire departments, and all the other services that they received in life. They succeeded because of grit and determination, but they want to see all of that cut. And so this deep-seated ideology is what we have to overcome. It's not just the Mercers of the world who are funding the cuts to Planned Parenthood. What do you think of that sort of observation that she made?
I think that that's been what we've been reading in the Times. I think that is just the whole core of I don't care. I'm so disgusted with government, but that's part of it. I want to just very quickly say that part of the problem in speaking with some of our red elected officials is we can be very rational. I had a really good, what I thought was a really good conversation with one of our state senators and talked to her about trying to find some middle ground. And the contraceptive issue, people will disagree from here to hell and gone on abortion. And there's very little middle ground if you really are anti-abortion. But contraceptive perception is an area where we ought to be able to have some dialogue. And you walk away from some of these meetings with them going, you're right, we should be it. And then they go and, you know, so even having thoughtful dialogue is not necessarily going to educate them to the point where they're going to actually change, you know, how they vote.
The pressure,
Yes.
when she goes back, when she leaves her district, or goes back into the Hill. I was on the Hill on March.
Well, this is state, so I'm just
Yeah,
saying, it's the
okay.
same thing there.
The young representatives on both sides are telling us that it's like a war room. You know, their stomach churns every day they step into the Capitol because, you know, the pressure to come our way, you know, don't speak out, you know, not to. So it's hard for them to do. It's hard to be a politician in Washington right now and have your own mind. It's very difficult.
Joe? Did you have a question?
I was wondering that I haven't seen the anti-abortion activists with their signs outside, and I don't travel.
Outside of the Kingston Hospital.
Oh, we usually get pins. There's one guy that usually shows up, sometimes more. They really target Poughkeepsie. I mean, we have a huge.
And on the arterial, not by the door. It's very funny.
Where?
In Poughkeepsie.
Oh, they're right outside our health center.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. I think that the more people we can reach this way, the better. I know that at several of the other events that I've done like this, I have said, if you have a group of friends, if you have a group of Republican friends that you would like to, you know, open your home to, coffee, tea, I'll do it in, you know, and mostly people have been doing it like at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock on a weekday night. People just stop by from work. We don't take quite as long as this, but people from those groups have said, I'd like you to do it. So it's a spider web. So I'm only one person, but I do think if any of you would like to try and get more engaged with your friends, we're also going to be changing our fundraising structure probably this year. Woodstock has been the primary focal point, and so we're going to try and create a broader Ulster County event of some sort that I hope that we can engage more people in the Ulster County area. So,
Quick question, is there any kind of training program?
yes. There should be information at the desk, I'll check, that our Public Affairs Office has opportunities for people. Please leave your name and your email so that if there's a blast we want to get out and say,
Yes.
please be with us at Vasso's office on Friday such and such, or we may be doing something immediately after the vote. I want to make sure that we can reach everybody, so yes.
And the table is set up as you exit, and there's wonderful packets that you put together specifically.
And I think he brought some.
And yeah, there's a mailing list, there's a way to donate, there's t-shirts.
Take a
So-
t-shirt.
So I want to thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming today.